In the name of the living God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. The 70 returned rejoicing and most likely looking for a high five from Jesus. But he gave them instead a 15-yard penalty for excessive celebration. Do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, he said, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Have you ever noticed how very, very deeply we cherish being validated and appreciated and congratulated and affirmed? There is nothing wrong with feeling good about accomplishment or trying hard, by the way. We rightly congratulate the winning jockey of the horse race, especially if we bet on his horse. And the horse deserves the extra carrot. And likewise, each of us should humbly accept applause when it's genuinely warranted. However, when it comes to what could be called the relentless cultural pressure to feel affirmed or have high self-esteem, I have discovered through very bitter personal experience the very same thing you have. And what I'm talking about is the very emotional dilemma that happens every afternoon at exactly 3:15, when the pressure to be winsome or cheerful or sexy or rich or smart or healthy or right or whatever becomes, when those things become the very torque that turns the tires of life, when it becomes too important, in other words. When we moved here about 10 years ago, our son Gus was all of 4 years old, and one of the first things he did was join a Saturday soccer league down on Siesta Key at Glebe Park. And in the car, on the way home after the final game of the season, he told me how important it was for me to be present with him the very next Saturday at the same time for his team's trophy presentation. Considering that his team lost every single game of the season, I addressed the elephant in the room by saying, "Son, of all the teams on planet Earth, why would your team be getting trophies?" And he said to me, "Dad, you don't understand." Incidentally, he said those exact words every day for the last decade to me. And it's okay if we talk about him today. He's at camp. And I can assure you he doesn't watch his father's sermons online. But the fact is, I really do understand. Totally and completely I understand. I was once on a mission trip to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and I saw with my very own eyes a bronze memorial plaque in a parish hall, like we have around here, that had been permanently affixed on the wall some years ago, and it read, quote, "In memory of Father George Cross, 5th Rector, unable administrator." That most unfortunate plaque, yes, I changed the name, you can't Google it. That most unfortunate plaque is the result of what happened when Father Cross's calamitous tenure collided with trophyism, with the cultural requirement to be affirmed and celebrated. And I can assure you this is exactly the case with every fiber of my being, because while no priest sets out to be a lousy administrator, not even one has ever once set out to be remembered exclusively and eternally above all else as an able one. What's at stake today is this. When we thrive a little too much on validation or admiration, when life's prime motivator is all about what others think about us, or even what we think about our own external image, when we do that, we are ultimately left to stand on our own 2 feet. We're independent then, no longer dependent. And for those who promise at baptism to put their whole trust in the grace and love and sufficiency of Jesus Christ, this is called hell on earth. This is called, quite frankly, a false god. This is called an idol. And in the end, false gods always fail. You build me up buttercup, baby, just to let me down. The complete stranger in rural North Carolina who gave me a really short haircut 2 weeks ago told me that life was really hard at home because her boyfriend didn't love her anymore. For the record, I was safely wearing civilian attire, and I did not tell her what I did on the weekends. But she held forth anyway. So I finally asked her, well, what are you going to do about it? She told me, true story, she told me that she just purchased 3 months access to an upcoming online series of TED Talks by some so-called relationship guru entitled, How to Make Him Fall in Love with Me Again. And the worst part is how she was visibly giddy, genuinely excited that they let her break up the $300 fee over 3 months. I could not get out of that chair fast enough. But interestingly, and I have to tell you, it wasn't my disapproval or my self-righteous condescension of her decision that set me to flight instead of fight. I was dying to get out of there because she reminded me so darn much of myself. She reminded me of you. She reminded me of us and our endless struggle to be trophied above all else, to be feted for being the greatest grandparent or parent or sister or brother or wife or cousin or husband or cook, and so on. Where in your life do you feel most inadequate? Most of us feel terribly inadequate, at least in some way, for precisely 56 minutes out of every 60. And this is universally true, and you know I'm right. Yet, ironically, for most of us, instead of reaching out to God, we keep reaching in, returning once again to land on our own 2 feet alone, over and over again. And this only leads to even more unresolved tension, to a real spiritual leprosy. I'm reminded of that haunting quote by Lewis that you'll remember. Human history is the long, terrible story of man trying to find something other than God which will make him happy. When the 70 returned, they had every reason to be excited and affirmed and to celebrate mission accomplished. They had every right to be happy, and Jesus knew that. Jesus isn't a party pooper. But what Jesus also knows and wants each of us to experience is that when he wrote their names and ours in the book of life, he did that which is always and forever greater than what we might ever be recognized doing for him, ourselves, or anyone else. Win the Heisman. I'm rooting for you. Go for the gold in the Olympics. Do good to all men, as St. Paul said to the Galatians. But God forbid we forget, for even 1 second, the source of the greatest comfort of all. I read a very touching and even emotional article last week about an amazing woman in the UK Dame Deborah James. You may have read about her. She died last week after a long battle with bowel cancer. She was a bright, caring, and amazing woman and journalist. She was only 40 years old. That got my attention. She was a tremendous campaigner for cancer awareness, and she wrote a beautiful, if not chilling, daily account of her struggle with cancer to help others. When she chose to stop receiving treatments and focus on being comfortable, she set a lofty goal back in May of raising 250,000 pounds for cancer research before the end of May. She raised $7 million online. In thanksgiving for her work and bringing increased awareness to cancer risks for young persons, Prince William traveled to her home because she was unable to travel, and he bestowed damehood upon her on behalf of his grandmother, the Queen. A reporter asked Jane what the visit was like. Jane responded by saying this, quote, "When we heard the prince was coming, the cleaning antics and lawn care and preparation went off the scale." Let that sink in. Here is an accomplished, but surely soon to die, young professional who learned the prince was coming to elevate her name, and the only way she knew instinctively to respond was to stress over the dust bunnies and errant weeds. After the visit, however, Jane admitted this to the reporter. Quote, "All the cleaning antics and preparation felt irrelevant because William was so incredibly kind to me." In the end, the validation and affirmation that matters most won't be the trophies we won or the visitors we impressed. All of that, however grand, will feel rather irrelevant, yes? What can animate our lives, both now and in the life to come? That which really can make us happy in every sense of the word is the eternal kindness of Jesus Christ, the atoning victory he won over our sin and death, so that our names, your name, and my name might be written in the Lamb's book of everlasting life. And that's that.